do Cygnet Bay, tam gdzie jest Pearl Farm. To będzie nasz drugi dzień pobytu na Cape Levick.
Perłowa.
Perłowa przygoda.
Farma.
Na razie nas trzęsie lepiej, jak to zwykle bywa na tych drogach w Australii. I to są, co to jest? Koła z pociągów?
Z wagonów.
Z wagonów.
Zrobili
I tutaj
sobie płotek.
pomysłowiec.
Ważący kilkaset ton, czy kilka tysięcy ton.
Ciekawe. No i na starej łodzi jest napis 800 metrów do Cygnet Bay.
Zobaczcie tam jaki
Wow,
krążownik.
wjeżdżamy. Cygnet Bay. I na powitanie Atlanta. Stary krążownik oceaniczny. Parking.
Zobaczymy, co
Tu
to
mam już
jest.
entry w prawo, a ty wjeżdżasz niedobrze. Nie wjeżdżaj tu, w prawo.
No ja sobie obijam.
Pierwsze 3 kroki i stoimy pod drzewem, z którego zwisają małe mango, dojrzewają. Jeszcze potrzebują z 2 miesiące, żeby dojrzeć, ale no, już są. Dawniej nurkowie schodzili łowić perły w takich gigantycznych kombinezonach jak kosmonauci. Ciężkie. A tutaj na takim pięknym perłopławie jest wymalowany symbol harmony, który oznacza w języku Rigi, mówi o harmonii pomiędzy plemionami. I tutaj są symbole 4 plemion. W każdym narożniku tego Rigi, czyli tego perłopławu, jest symbol 4 plemion, a słońce, symbol słońca, gwiazd i księżyca i bumeranga reprezentuje prawa hunting laws, czyli prawa polowania dla tych plemion. Jak widać, ceny są dużo niższe niż w Brum i taki naszyjnik z pereł kosztuje $8400. Podobny naszyjnik w Brum kosztowałby $10,000. A tu przyjdziemy się kąpać po zakończonym Pearl Tour. Bardzo przyjemnie i pięknie.
Do a live harvest of our oyster as well, and each day we don't know what we're going to get, so hopefully today we get a big beautiful pearl, and then after that we'll come back up
Zaczynamy
and finish with the
perłowy
pearl
tour.
appreciation, where we learn all.
Ach, to jest ten słynny aborygen, który robi rzeźbi w tych perłopławach.
This is
Hello.
Bruce Wigan. Bruce Wigan is well, I'll let Bruce introduce himself. I can introduce Bruce. So Bruce is my mate, and he's the traditional owner of this land, and he's also our Ridgie carver, which we're going to learn about that and how important it is for his people when passing down of that culture. So this is Bruce.
Hi, Bruce.
So these are ones that are being worked on now. So we're going to cut those, polish them up, so that we can make the Ridgie out of them. And then Bruce has got all his stories, his family stories, and his stories from his own experiences in his life that he'll pass down through that shell. Yeah.
Oh, yes. Bruce, how long have you been doing this?
Many years now.
Many years. Did you learn as a child from your family?
Yeah, from my family, yeah.
Yes.
And I do their story sometimes I make my own stories. Yeah.
Przewodnik prowadzi nas do takiego workshop, czyli tam, gdzie to wygląda jak klasa w szkole. A, będzie film. Chodź, okej.
Pink tartar maxima, pink tartar meaning pearl producing oyster, maxima meaning the largest. It's also known as the Australian South Sea pearl oyster, and these oysters can live up to 30 years old. I'm just going to pass this one round. The Ridgie carver still out today. It's, with the pearl shell industry down with the hard hat suits with the 80 kilograms, weighing up to 80 kilograms with the copper helmets and the lead boots, it would take 2 men just to lower them down to the sea floor, and then they would be drifting along, collecting these shell by hand. So a lot to learn more about, and that's what begins our culture control process. So if you guys want to follow me, we're just going to head down to our...
Put it on the table and then
So with our live oysters, each week our pearl farm team will collect some oysters for us and clean them and then bring them to the tank here. This way we can harvest the oysters on tour and show you guys how we get the pearls, but also it gives us a good idea about what's actually happening out there on our farm, so we can keep a close eye on pearl in there today. So we're going to harvest this one today. Generally speaking, we can seed these oysters up to 2 to 3 times during their life, but generally the first pearl is going to be the best. So if this oyster produces a good pearl the first time, then we're going to reseed it. If it doesn't produce a good pearl the first time, well then it's not a good pearl producer, and then it's not going to be seeded again, so it'll get harvested for its pearl meat and for the use of the pearl shell. So everything gets used. So actually create the pearl is that it takes 3 different types of shellfish to create one pearl. So your first being the host shell that's going to carry that seed for 2 to 3 years. This one's already carried that seed for 2 to 3 years, but it would start the exact same way as I have done here now. So we're going to peg that oyster, so our pearl farm team will clean that oyster and then peg it, and then our pearl technician is going to seed that oyster. So to do that, they need the second part of the puzzle, which is a Mississippi mussel from the it's a freshwater mussel from the Mississippi River in America. And the reason that this is chosen is because it has the same thermal quality and density and quality of this shell and that white nacre appearance. So in terms of a seed being implanted in a saltwater oyster, this is what Mikimoto figured out all those years ago and what we still use today for the fact that of the qualities of that shell. You can pass this around to have a look if you like. See what sort of pearl we've got today. So just cutting down the back of that adductor muscle, which helps the oyster to open and close, and then that's going to release that shell. So then we can have a good look at what's actually inside of this. So it's quite a big shell. You can see really nice big shell there. So I'm just going to clean that adductor muscle off the shell there. So the first thing that I want to do is I want to actually get Mr. P Crab out of here. So Mr. P Crab has a symbiotic relationship with that oyster, so he lives there for his whole life, and he's like the housekeeper, so he makes sure that everything's neat and tidy in there, and that oyster's nice and healthy. So then the second thing I want to do is I want to actually feel around underneath that mantle tissue to see if there's any keshies. Keshies are seedless pearls, so as close as you'll get to a natural pearl in a farm environment. We can't actually call them natural pearls because they haven't come from a wild oyster, it's a farmed oyster. So just checking under there to see if there's any keshies, which there's not. And then the next thing I'm going to do is feel in the middle of that, the oyster in the gonad, where the pearl sac is. So a pearl sac forms around that seed, and that mantle tissue continues to grow, secreting that nacre liquid, then forming the pearl. So can you guys see that pearl there? Yeah. So I'm just bringing that pearl up now. Here we go, are you ready?
Yes.
Here it comes. It's quite a strong pearl sac there. Doesn't want to come out, there we go.
Wow, so beautiful.
So we've got a beautiful little pearl there. Cleaning that seed and then also covering it in that nacre to form that beautiful, perfect round pearl of exceptional quality is really an achievement in terms of nature, and we have no control over what that oyster does in that 2 to 3 year period.
What's it taste like? Scallop? Abalone?
Cool.
More scallop.
It's not fishy, it's a bit chewy.
Oh, so beautiful.
Squid or
Yeah,
something like
okay,
that, a
thank
bit
you.
chewy. Sold after that 5 or 6 years. So over on our Broken Bay pearl farm earlier this year, only a few months ago, 5 years of work was lost in 3 days. So over 1 million oyster pearls. So this is a 19 mm
Perły z
pearl.
tej farmy są liczone $150 za gram.
And that pearl's valued at
A oto nasz lunch w upalny dzień. Lunch włoski, czyli prosciutto i melon. Sandra i tomato. I gdzie jesteśmy? Na Cape Levick. I mamy takie pyszności. No dzisiaj obiadamy się smakołykami. To jest nasza druga część lunchu. Tym razem w Cygnet Bay, tutaj w bistro, koło tego basenu, w którym byliśmy wczoraj. Ale to nasz pożegnalny lunch, ponieważ jutro już stąd wyjeżdżamy. No i jeszcze tak tutaj się delektujemy smakami, widokami, zapachami. I oczywiście browsing internet.